My name is Leslie, and I'll be teaching in place of Sarah today. Normally, Sarah teaches the class, and sometimes she is super great and gives me the opportunity to teach it instead. So I'm really excited about that opportunity today, and thank you everyone for showing up or tuning in and joining us. Um, so we'll get started in a few minutes. I'm just going to spend the next 2 or 3 minutes providing some sound for people to relax to, and also to make sure that if anyone's having trouble hearing me, they get a chance to sort of let me know so something can be done about that. Um, but I'll go grab those and we'll get started. Perfect. So it is about 10 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started either in a seated position or maybe laying on your back, but something that is comfortable and a position that you can be in for several minutes, that you can get pretty relaxed in. So just take a moment, pick something, maybe grab a cushion or anything you might need to stay in that pose. Once you're there, we'll start to close the eyes and bring our attention to the breath. Starting to take more full, deep breaths in and out. And we just want to get to a point where we feel like we're filling our body completely with air on the inhale and emptying completely on the exhale. encouraged to create some sound with your breath. Eventually, letting your focus drift away from the breath, letting your breath return to normal, letting it relax. We'll start to become aware of our physical body. And we'll take this time to do a body scan. So I like the imagery of a Xerox machine with that really bright bar of light that scans through the whole thing that you're putting in the copier from top to bottom. So maybe that imagery is helpful, but we're going to go body part by body part and practice bringing awareness there. So whatever position you're in, we'll start with the toes. So you don't have to move for this. Just practicing being aware. We'll start with the toes, imagining the tips of the toes, the middles of the toes, and where the toes connect to the feet. And going toe by toe, first toe, second toe, third toe, fourth toe, and fifth toe. Seeing if you can feel the skin, what the air feels like against the skin, or maybe you feel a sense of energy inside of the body. So sensing each body part from the inside out. Each toe. On each foot. And then moving on to the foot itself. The top of the foot, the bottom of the foot. The insides of the foot. Imagining what all our muscles and bones might look like. And eventually moving the awareness to the heel of the foot, the ankle, and eventually our calves and our shins. So again, it might help to imagine white light or perhaps something else, some other imagery that helps. Or just imagine that awareness traveling slowly up the body, not missing anything. Eventually our shins and our calves, that bottom part of the leg, where that connects to the ankle. Eventually bringing our awareness up even more to our knees, to the back of our knees, the skin on the knee, the inside and the outside of the knee. Eventually moving the awareness further up your leg, to the thigh, the front of the thigh, the back of the thigh, the sides of the leg, where you connect from your knee to your thigh. Just use your mind to imagine what it looks like, what it feels like. And that experience might be different for every body part. And eventually bring our awareness towards the hips, the backside, the groin. Just sitting with each body part, acknowledging what exactly it feels like when we travel there with our mind. Eventually even further up, noticing the belly, the back, the sides of the body. Eventually the back, the upper back, the shoulders, the chest area. What do those feel like when you breathe in and fill up with air? Or are you able to get any extra awareness from doing that in those body parts? And eventually noticing where the shoulders connect to the arms, traveling down the forearms, the elbows, the wrists. Eventually bringing our awareness into our hands, the front and the back of our hands, all the way to our fingertips. Noticing each finger, each fingernail, and what the air feels like when it touches the skin on your hands. And eventually moving towards the neck and the head. Noticing where your torso connects to your head, your collarbone, the back of your neck. And then eventually scanning through all the parts of the head. Noticing what your eyeballs feel like inside of your head, what your mouth feels like, your cheeks, your temples, your forehead. Even imagining what your teeth would feel like if you could feel your teeth, if they had sensation. What would your hair feel like? What does your skin feel like? Your ears, your eyelashes, your eyelids. Not leaving anything out. And when you have scanned everything you feel like you need to scan in your body, taking a moment with the entire body as a unit, and just noticing it all at once, being aware of the entire body at once as a field of different sensations. And we'll slowly begin to come back into the room. Opening the eyes, deepening the breath, starting to move around. And starting to explore any new awareness or anything new that came to you after that activity. And there is no rush to get there, but from here we'll start to make our way down onto our backs. If you're already on your back, we'll be coming into bridge pose ultimately. So our knees will be bent and our feet will be flat on the floor. And when you're ready, you'll just start to breathe in and out, lifting the hips. And starting off slowly, maybe just the bottom, the lowest part of the back comes off the ground as you inhale, and drops back towards the ground as you exhale. Inhaling, lifting the hips up, exhaling, dropping them back down. And feel free to adjust your feet if you're in any discomfort. And from here, we'll start to bring the arms into our pose. So reaching up overhead as we inhale, and letting the arms come back down as we exhale. A few more full big breaths with our feet pressed into the floor. And on your next exhale, you'll allow the hands and the hips to come back down. The soles of the feet will come together, and the knees will drop out to the sides. And if this feels like too much in your hips or in your back, you can use your hands or your fists to keep your thighs from hitting the ground. Hold them in a comfortable position. And we'll take a few breaths here, bringing breath into the hips. Eventually, helping the knees up with the hands. We'll roll onto one side, and we'll find ourselves in a seated cross-legged position. And from here, we'll press the hands into the thighs or into the floor for support. And we'll just start to slowly create circles out of our hips. So staying really tall in your spine and just being careful, being mindful of any sensations you come across as you're doing this. I'm very visual. I really love imagery for like every pose. So some good imagery for this is you're making a cake or a stew or something you have to stir. And your spine is sort of like a spoon. And maybe if you're making cake batter, you want to get all the lumps out of your batter. You want nice, smooth cake batter. So your spine is like a spoon, and your pelvic area is sort of like a bowl. And switching directions if you haven't already. Start to slow that motion down. We'll sit up nice and tall, pressing down into the hips. And we'll start to do some circles with the shoulders. So allowing them to come up towards the ears and to drop down and back. So making circles up, down, forward with the shoulders. If it's comfortable or better for you, you may want to move them separately. But making sure to treat both sides of your body as equally as possible. So whatever you do with one shoulder, try your best to do with the other shoulder. And changing directions if you haven't done that already. And eventually slowing that down taking any kind of extra movements or shaking, or if anything feels unresolved from that motion, just kind of getting that out of your system, but slowing down, preparing for the next pose. We'll use the hands on the mat to support us, and we'll just bring the legs out in front with the feet still on the ground, pretty far away from the body. And from here, we'll sit up nice and tall, and we'll just allow the knees to start to drop from side to side. So they may be hovering for some of us they may hit the ground. And eventually, you'll allow the legs to drop over to one side, and you'll allow the body to come towards that same side. And you'll twist towards where your back was originally facing when you were seated. So away from your feet. Breathing in here. On the exhale, going to the other side, and taking that same twist with the top of the body. Breathing in here, and coming back to that neutral position. We'll allow the legs to come out in front of us, and we'll put a lot of energy into our feet. So almost pulling the toes back towards you, sort of flexing the feet. We'll keep a lot of energy in our legs, so our legs feel like they're growing longer almost. And we'll keep our hands flat on the mat for support. So as we're pulling our legs out nice and long, we're also pressing down into the mat with our hips. And using that energy to pull our rib cage up. So our spine and our legs should be growing very long. Sitting up nice and tall in this pose, and eventually using the hands to grow yourself taller. Still breathing here, just keeping a lot of energy in the body, a lot of strength here. Becoming aware of the muscles in the low belly. I like to keep such a flex in my legs and my feet here that my shins are activated to such a point where if I bounce my leg on the floor, my heels do not hit the ground. So do that if you're on a cushion, maybe test that out. Not so much on a hard floor, but that is one way to know that you have activity in your feet. And we'll allow that pose to release. So whatever you were tightening, maybe give it a bit of movement, shake around, try to release a bit of that pose. And we'll take our hands back to that spot. And from here, we'll put a bend back in the knees. And we'll come into reverse table. So very strong and stable in the hands and feet, and lifting the hips up towards the sky. Still breathing here. Again, keeping a lot of strength in our lower belly and our core, and our arms and legs, keeping our feet active. Take a nice big inhale in this pose, and on the exhale, we'll start to let the hips come back down, and we'll allow the legs to relax. Maybe shake the legs out, whatever you do to help yourself relax. And we'll come into the reverse table pose again. So Maybe if your feet weren't in the right spot or your hands felt weird the first time, you can try to modify the pose and come into it in a better form. So again, we're pressing into the hands, we're pressing into the feet, and the hips will lift up off the ground. We're using our arms, our legs, and our core to support us. You want to avoid doing any extra work with your neck or your head. Take a nice big inhale here, and on the exhale we'll come back down, releasing anything we might need to release. And we'll do one last reverse table pose where we come up like that. And I'll give the option for people to come into reverse plank. So instead of keeping the legs bent for reverse table, you keep the legs straight. You have the option to do either one again. But for reverse plank, you keep your legs straight and lift the hips. Again, remembering to breathe, even in a challenging pose. It's always easier when you breathe. Many things in life are easier if you keep breathing. We'll take a great big inhale here, and on the exhale we'll come down all the way onto the back. We'll hug the knees into the chest. And if it feels good, you can rock back and forth or front to back, giving your low back a chance for the ground and gravity to relax it and help it to lengthen. While we're on our back here, we'll come to some stillness and we'll bring our awareness to where the hips are, and we'll just take one hip down as the other hip goes up. So curving to one side, breathing here, and then we'll switch. So the opposite hip will go down, and the opposite hip will go up. Breathing and stretching here. And we'll come out of that pose and we'll roll over onto our side. And we will find ourselves in child's pose. So hands flat on the mat, knees out wide, toes together. And allow the head and the chest to just melt forward. And take a few deep inhales here. And see if you can notice the back of the body expanding as you fill up with air. Take one more big inhale here. On the exhale, we'll press down into the hands. We'll come onto the bottoms of the feet. And we'll press ourselves into downward facing dog. So drawing your hips up and back. Maybe for now we keep a pretty strong bend in our knees. And maybe you find some motion in your heels, moving one at a time. We'll eventually find stillness. You can either walk the hands to the feet or walk the feet to the hands. And we'll meet in a forward fold. So you can still keep a really big bend in your knees here. And it's your choice what you do with your arms. So they may feel good on the ground, they may feel good behind you, or they may feel good grabbing opposite elbows. Our goal here is, again, to sort of let gravity lengthen out our spine. So not letting the head or the neck really do any work here. And eventually we'll put a bigger bend in the knees, and we'll start to sweep the arms out, and we'll come all the way up, reaching the arms up overhead. We'll allow the palms to meet in front of the heart. And we'll do that a few more times. So checking in with the feet, making sure you feel nice and strong and stable in your feet. We'll inhale, bend the knees, sweep the arms out and up. Exhale, hands meet in front of the heart. Another one. Inhale, arms sweep out and up. Exhale, hands meet in front of the heart. And one last one. Inhale, arms sweep out and up. Exhale, hands meet in front of the heart. And from here, we'll bring the legs out a little wider than the shoulders. Try to still be comfortable in your hips and in your feet. And we'll bring our hands to the hips. And again, we'll work with more circles. So picking a direction and going slowly, moving the hips around. So if it helps you, you can keep a bend in your knees. Eventually, once you feel comfortable on one side, going in the opposite direction. One side might be very different than the other. So just noticing the differences, noticing the similarities, noticing what's easy or what's challenging. Eventually, coming to stillness. We'll keep our feet pretty wide apart and keep our knees sort of loose and bendy for this next posture. So we'll take one hand, we'll just start with one, it doesn't matter particularly which one. And more imagery today. We're going to pretend that it's a windy day, maybe on a beach or something, and our hand is a kite. And the wind is just sort of spontaneously blowing our hand around in circles. So you can bend your knees, your feet can leave the ground. Maybe you put your other hand on your hip or to your back. But we're just letting this hand sort of unpredictably be taken wherever it gets taken. So that could be over your head, towards the ground, behind you, around your legs. But really try to get a dynamic range of twists and turns and areas that your kite hand can go. Whatever direction might feel good. And again, you're free to leave your mat, free to walk in circles or wherever the wind decides to take your kite today. And we'll eventually slow that motion down with our first hand and come to a stop, and we'll switch hands. So whatever hand you didn't use the first time around, whatever hand you did not use the first time around, you're going to use that hand this time. And just the same thing. We're pretending that it's a windy day, and that hand is sort of spontaneously being blown around by the wind, wherever the wind takes it. It's not truly spontaneous because you're deciding where it goes. So I guess you're both the wind and the kite in this situation. But wherever would feel good in your body and in your back, this pose or activity, whatever you want to call it, has a surprising amount of benefits for many body parts. You just end up using so many. So eventually, or whenever you feel ready, we are going to use both hands. So you have two kites now, and they're both can go in the same directions, different directions. They're just sort of being blown around by the wind, and for the last few moments of this pose, we're going to imagine that the wind is blowing super hard and in a very turbulent fashion. So our hands are really just going all over the place. So if there's any area that your hands haven't traveled to yet in this atmosphere of your body, try to get them to go there too. So we're not super concerned about what we look like. We're sort of just getting motion in every body part now. So maybe you go faster, maybe you stretch wider, maybe your kite ends up on the ground behind you, going in circles. And eventually, we'll start to move very slowly, and we will end up doing empty coat sleeves. So you can go as slowly or as quickly as you need to. Now is maybe a good time for a water break since you've been moving around so much. We'll eventually come to stillness. So if there's any other last motion you needed to do, any sort of kite flying or shaking or anything else you need to do before you come to stillness, do that, and we'll meet with the hands on the hips and the feet at about the distance of the shoulders apart. And from here, we'll start to use our thumbs to find our sacrum. So that is a little triangle of bone at the base of your spine. And if you're not super savvy with terminology like that, you're going to use your thumbs on your lower back to just sort of search around, apply a little bit of gentle pressure with your thumbs, and just try to find a sweet spot. Try to find something that feels good when you apply pressure. And once you've found somewhere that it feels like your thumbs fit and it's comfortable, you'll just find stillness with the hands. You'll start to gently apply pressure. Don't do anything that hurts with your thumbs. And you'll just start to grow your upper body taller while your feet press into the ground, while your thumbs press into that low back. And if it feels good in the body, you can start to draw your elbows towards each other. And you can go for a little bit of a back bend here. Only if you're not in any pain or anything like that, any discomfort. We'll take one more inhale here, growing really tall. And on the exhale, we'll start to release that pose. And from here, we'll come into just one balancing pose. Last standing pose, and then we can sit down. So either leg you want to start on is fine. So whatever leg you want to be coming off the ground for tree pose, you want to focus some attention on the opposite leg that's going to be holding you up. So I like to pretend that the leg that's going to come off the ground is already off the ground before it actually is. And sort of just see what the weight feels like before you come up. So whenever your supporting foot feels stable, you can start to lift the other foot. And you want to avoid the knee, so either above the knee or below the knee, your knees move forward, not side to side when they bend. So avoiding that joint, avoiding letting the hips go to one side or the other, and remembering to integrate our upper body. So all this stuff should be helping hold you up. Your shoulders, your core should be lifting you up. And we'll take another big breath in here. Try to find your fullest expression of what this pose is. And on the exhale, we'll gently allow ourselves to come back down. And we'll prepare for the other side. So getting that leg ready, making sure it feels nice and stable wherever it is. Taking an inhale and coming up. So if you are in your balance pose and you feel unshakable and just super stable today, I'm going to challenge you to try and close your eyes and see if you can maintain that same stability. And we'll take an inhale, getting fully into whatever form of this pose you chose. And on the exhale, we'll allow ourselves to release the pose. I like to shake my legs out after because tree pose always makes my shins very tight. So whatever you need to take to feel free of that pose. And we'll come down and we'll meet in child's pose. So we'll just take a moment there. Hands flat on the ground, head and chest moving towards the mat, knees wide apart and toes together. And again, as we take a few deep breaths here, noticing what the air feels like in the back of the body. And from here, we'll come all the way down onto the belly. So legs and arms are extended all the way out. And you'll just take the legs one foot at a time. You'll start to reach very far back with one foot and very far back with the other foot. Almost like you're walking down with your feet, with the tops of your feet. And the hands will just stay pressed against the ground as we do that with our feet. And after that, we'll come into, we'll do a little bit of work with our abs. So reaching out with the hands and the feet, we'll just lift them off the mat. Getting into this sort of Superman kind of pose. Using the core to hold us up. And on an exhale, we'll come back down. And we'll just do a few more like that. So lifting the arms, lifting the legs, reaching both up and out. Using the core to support you. And on the exhale, lowering back down. And as long as this isn't hurting you or anything like that, we'll do one more. Make it your biggest, best one yet. Get really strong. Keep a lot of energy in the fingers and the toes. Lift up everything. And on the exhale, lower everything down. Make a pillow with your hands and put a bend in the knees. Just allow the feet to drop from one side to the other side a few times. And we'll come to stillness. Still on the ground. So we'll come into frog pose or half frog pose. And it doesn't matter which side you start with, just make sure to do both sides. And a cat is in the way of my board with all the poses on it. I'm sorry. So we're coming into frog pose. So we'll start on one side. Again, it doesn't matter. Just make sure you cover both sides. So we'll be putting a bend in the knee. In fact, that's probably hard to see. So we'll be doing this on the ground, but I'll demo it on my closet here. So you'll be putting a bend, you'll be laying flat on the ground, and you'll be putting a bend in one knee. And a bend in the elbow on that same side. So you want two 90-degree angles here as you're laying flat on the ground. So some people like to have a prop under that leg that's bent or under the arm that's bent. So if you have cushions or pillows that you can spare, they might be a good idea in this pose. And we'll just spend a few breaths here. Just seeing if we can relax for a moment and get any tightness that we feel to dissolve. Eventually straightening that arm and that leg back out. We'll come into the same pose on the opposite side of the body. So again, bending that arm, bending that leg, whichever arm and leg you did not use the first time. And seeing if we can use our next few breaths to get any tension that might be hanging around in our hip or in our thigh or anywhere else to melt away. And when you're ready, straightening out that arm and that leg that you just had bent. And we'll find our way onto our back. And from here, before we finish, we'll do some inversions with our legs. So you can use your hands on the backs of your thighs to support you here if your legs get tired. And we'll send the feet into the air with our legs out long. There can be a bend in your knees if you need that. We'll just start to create a lot of activity in the toes. So we have lots and lots of bones and muscles and joints and all these different tiny connective parts in our feet. So I don't know if they all are, but I'm going to invite you to attempt to see if you can move anything, every single thing, like every single part, any bone, any joint, any piece of your anatomy in your feet. Try to get it moving. So maybe you flex and point the feet or make circles with your ankles. Sending your toes in different directions. make circles out of the hips with your legs. Again, you can use your hands to support you to do that. But just continuing to move here. Trying to increase your circulation in the feet. Eventually finding some stillness, allowing the legs to drop out to either side, making a V shape. Making a V shape with the legs, and maybe use your hands to support it. Eventually bringing the legs together. Allowing them to come back to the ground, and any last positions or postures your body might need before we begin to relax. Now is a great opportunity to take those poses. We'll just grab any cushions or blankets that you might want, and we'll set up to come into Savasana. For the last 5 minutes, I'll invite, we'll do Savasana, and I'll provide some sound for the last 5 minutes like I did earlier for a few minutes before class. So once you've chosen a pose, just really committing to it, really committing to being relaxed and not letting anything stop you from that. And really just being honest with yourself about what would make you the most comfortable right now and doing it. And for the next few minutes, we'll try to just keep our minds clear and free. And if your mind does happen to wander off to something else outside of what you're doing right now, that's super normal. And you'll just compassionately remind yourself to kind of come back to the present moment. So if you're still relaxing, our practice is just about finished for today. Thank you so much everyone who joined in. I always am really grateful for having the opportunity to teach. I get to learn so much. It's great. So thank you everyone for joining, and I hope to be able to do this again soon. Bye.